That was my first, the other day when we went scalloping was my first time. I think Karsten has been doing it for so long that he made it look pretty easy. And I picked up on what he was doing, and you basically are dredging the bottom of the pond and sifting through the seaweed and the muck and trying to find those scallops. You were right about pretty good haul.
Was there a few there?
Yeah, it's a lot. My name's Chris Fischer. I grew up on Martha's Vineyard in Showmark and Quina. I worked in New York City for 3 years in a restaurant. And I also grew up here around food and growing food and harvesting food and fishing, lobstering, hunting. My family's always had a big interest in where food comes from and growing their own food. He was telling me he doesn't even eat them.
Well, no, I do love scallops. I do.
You don't want to cut into your profits.
Exactly.
I moved back to the island 2 years ago to be closer to my family and to be closer to where the food comes from that I like to cook with. Working in New York City, I think there's a big disconnect between the growers and the restaurants and the chefs. There's just such an amazing variety and quality of products grown on the island and coming out of the oceans and coming out of the woods. To be back here with my family and to be close to that made a lot more sense than staying in the city. A lot of people use butter knives to open them. Here.
Oh no, go ahead. Try not to eat the profit, you know.
One easy recipe for bay scallops is to cook them in parchment paper with potatoes. The first thing you do is cook the potatoes because it takes the longest. I have salted water here. I like to cook my potatoes in salted water always because it adds a little bit of flavor. Bay scallops are, when they're fresh and when they're straight out of the ocean, there's nothing that compares to that. You know, Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard are known for these bay scallops because our waters are a lot cleaner than other parts of the United States and the Northeast. They're more plentiful here. We're making enough for 3 people. So I would say 4 potatoes is plenty. One of the best fresh seafood items you could really treat yourself to. Cook them till they're fork tender. I think it's important for people to feel comfortable cooking with them. Certain people may be intimidated by them. If you have a few simple techniques, I think probably the home cook would probably just need one dish that they make well with scallops that they can show off to their friends and they can make for their family, and that would be enough for most. This is what you come up with. I cooked these earlier, broke them up into pieces roughly the size of scallops. I'm gonna add them together. Give them a little toss. Now we season them. Salt, good amount of salt, pepper. Then take a shallot, clean it, and slice it on a bias. So we get these little slivers. They look nice, and they cook nice and fast. We'll add this to the mixture. You need about, I'd say, a shallot and a half. It's a good amount. You're gonna take the juice from 1 lemon, and I like to strain the seeds out with my fingers, like so. So since these scallops are so fresh, they're delicious actually eaten raw. So I'm going to taste this just to make sure the seasoning's okay before I cook them. I'm going to put a little bit more salt in. Once people start using really high quality ingredients, they start to realize that they can do less with them and spend less money and have less in their pantry. They don't need canned foods from all over the world. If they use better ingredients, they don't have to do as much with them. I'm centering it on half of the parchment paper. Fold it over like this, like a crease. You're gonna make lots of little folds. The reason you're doing all the folds is to trap the moisture in this little pocket. So none of those nice flavors, nutrients, anything can escape. So you're cooking the scallops in their own juices. You don't want to open these up beforehand because you don't want to lose any of that moisture and any of that flavor. And you can take it out of the oven, you can feel it. You'll be able to tell it's gonna sizzle on the pan. And also the parchment paper is gonna get nice and dark. Take our greens. This is Bib lettuce with a spring mix. You always wanna use more salad than you think necessary because after you dress it, it's gonna shrink down a lot. Add a little bit of chopped parsley to this, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. This bacon that we cooked beforehand, I left it in the pan, I cooked it whole, and then I chopped it up and left it in its fat. We're gonna mix that into the greens, save some of that fat in the pan. Now toss it well so you coat the greens with the bacon fat. Half a lemon, more acid. Just a little bit because there's enough on the scallops already. Now we're gonna take some celery, mix that in for some crunch. We're gonna make a little bed of greens. Now we're ready for our scallops. All we do now, open up the parchment and dump this into the bacon fat. They're very hot, so be careful. I'm just gonna mix it into the bacon fat a little bit, get some of that smoky flavor. Check it one more time for seasoning. I'm gonna zest some lemon. This is a microplane. This gives it a nice little bit of lemon flavor and a nice yellow color. We are ready to serve. Through cooking and growing up here, you know all the farmers, you know the fishermen, and when I was younger I knew that that's what they did, so coming back when I actually was ready to be in business and be cooking, it was natural to go to them, and it was easy to make these contacts and these relationships. A place like Larsen's is great because you go in and 6 out of the 8 people working there are Larsens, and I really didn't know Karsten well before this summer, but he knows my family and I know his family, so the connection there was pretty instant, and it's really a great perspective to go out with him because he's been doing it for so long. He's so knowledgeable of the pond, of the best techniques to get the most scallops in the short amount of time. His family has been doing it for so long that they don't really think about it anymore, they just go out and do it. That's also information that could be lost through the generations. I think it's really special to the vineyard that we have these resources. Just 1 or 2 generations before us, they were supporting themselves through agriculture and through fishing. It's really important to continue that practice, and it's a great way for families to stay connected.
I was supposed to maybe just do 15 seconds of that, right?
That was great. Sweet. What happened?
Cut.